Delighted to be here with Ashok Vaswani, who's the CEO of Barclays Retail and Business Banking. He's had a career spanning several decades and spent 18 years with Citigroup, and then had a stint with a private equity firm in New York prior to joining Barclays. Ashok also sits on the advisory board of the SP Jain Institute of Management and is a founder director of Lend a Hand, a non-profit organisation focused on education in India, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So delighted to be here with you. Thank you.
Great to be here with you, Kate.
Early on in life, who or what was your motivation?
I would think my mom was the biggest influence in my life. My dad was extremely traditional, conservative, and my mom was the more outgoing, very well educated, in fact, studying without her parents knowing kind of thing.
Oh, really? Fantastic.
Always wanting to go out partying and dancing and all of that, which my dad hated. So it's quite really coming together of two extremes.
Absolutely.
And so when I lost my father and it was just my mom and I, she was really what the motivation was.
So you were quite young when you lost your father, weren't you?
Yeah, about 6 years old. And I think that's what drove a kind of hunger and a kind of real fire in the belly that, something can be done, something must be done, and something big must be done.
You talk about your mother probably being your biggest motivator or influence, if you like. Was there anything specific around that? You say it sort of produced that sort of fire in your belly.
I think the value systems which she drove in me, education was a big deal for her. So it was always driving how you get yourself into become a better person. And that's really, ultimately it's limitations are only set in the mind.
Yes.
Right, and you can break out of limitations.
Absolutely. So I suppose a real hunger to learn more, be it a very formal education, or be it just the education of travelling and living somewhere else. What do you bring to that, and what does it?
I think it's all of the above. I think it's all of the above because it's a real opportunity to understand things a little better. Every single day, if you can just take a certain problem and just deal with it and just understand it a little better, and a little better, and a little better, and you get nuanced about it, and you really spend time thinking about it, breakthroughs come, right? That breakthrough, and when that breakthrough comes, there's a significant shift in your understanding. So you can really start saying that, what is my potential? How do I really achieve the maximum of my potential? Yes. And then how do you leverage others to kind of find that out? Yes. I don't know, Kate, you must have seen this in your profession, in your life, really finding somebody who gets into tune with what they really aspire for, what they're really passionate about, the output is just significantly different,
And therefore, I suppose, is that something that really influences your leadership style, i.e., that passion that you evidently have, it exudes around developing yourself, your own full potential, but also, if we're all going to develop it, it's the full potential of everybody.
Fundamentally, no one person is enough. The team is much more powerful than just one single person. So then the question is, how do you bring about a team and how do you get that team motivated? And if you start taking on the role that says that if a person on the team is not performing for any reason, right, at least 50% of the mistake, at least 50% of the reason why is you, as opposed to that person. And if you hold yourself against that standard, then you're constantly looking to play each one to their strengths, to their potential.
Do you think there's one characteristic that all leaders should really think about?
So, I don't know about one, but I think if you can narrow it down, maybe two. One is passion. Because life is too short. I mean, you have to find what you're really passionate about. It's only if you're passionate will you get the curiosity? Will you be able to go to that, you're willing to spend that time and that energy to get down to things, right? And I think, at least I sincerely believe, humility. Because to me, humility implies an ability to learn, right? If you're not humble, if you don't have that humility, you don't learn. And if you don't learn and you stagnate, you die, right? So I think, hard to bring it down to a couple, but I would say these two would be, in my books at least, the most important.
Oh, definitely. Well, I think it's that piece that I think often is used a lot as an expression. You've got the resources you need in a team,
Exactly right.
But actually unearthing them and finding them and really having a vehicle so that people can use those takes some doing, doesn't it? And a lot of trust, I think.
The first thing is, it starts with you, it starts with me. Am I pushing myself much more than I'm pushing the team?
Yes.
Right? Am I ready to make all those sacrifices, have all that kind of effort put into it, in fact more than what I'm asking of my team? Because then they realize that you're willing to give it your all. And then it kind of really comes together.
I know that when you were based in Singapore, that your wife and your daughter were in the US and decided to stay there, so that's where they preferred to be. That must have been quite hard.
Okay, sometimes you come across these incidents in life which are really life-changing, right? The ability to go out, we were all living in New York, the ability to go out and run Asia. And then, an Asian running Asia is a different kind of feeling. And, everybody knows that Asia was, the global powerhouse, stuff was happening, everything from China, India, Australia to Korea. It's hard from a career perspective to say no.
Yes.
On the other hand, my daughter was in this great school, just got into high school, settled down, moved around a lot. And as a family, we decided, fine, we're just going to make this work, right? And so we used to make trips, 12, 15 trips to New York. I didn't miss a single Parent-Teachers Association meeting.
Fantastic.
But it was a killer.
Yeah, I bet.
It was a killer. The 24-hour flight.
Yeah, absolutely.
But after doing that for 3 years, when she got into her final year of high school, both my wife and I realized that if I didn't come back for the year of high school, final year of high school, I just wouldn't have made a connection with her. And that's when we realized that that's more important than anything else. And then no job in the world, no senior position in the world, and being part of the operating committee, being within the top 30 of a 270,000 people organization is as important as your family, your daughter. And so we made the call and I went back. And,
Shifting a bit for a moment, what are the challenges as a leader in banking today?
Banking, as you know, Kate, has gone through, hell and back, right? Particularly in the UK, I think. I think in the US, more or less, they've kind of made a lot of noise about their problems, got over their problems, and kind of moved ahead. In the UK, banks and bankers have still got an extremely bad reputation. One has to argue that partly we've done it to ourselves, no question. If you're going to be a little more charitable, you'd say different parts of the bank have been a little different, but still not taking away from the fact that bankers are just not liked. I mean, it's just as bad a profession as maybe politicians or lawyers or, and at one stage we were really considered as such important elements of society.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the question is, how do you really, really win it back? And when you're in such a bad situation, you've got to swing the pendulum or the dial to the complete extreme. So you do have to do the extreme to prove that you're at least as good as normal or as good as the average. And therefore pushing the dial to the extreme requires a lot of tenacity, perseverance, and you take a couple of bets, right? You don't when you're trying to win back trust and reputation, you're not optimizing for financial performance, for example. You can prove that you're doing the right thing by the customer, and the customer will reward you for doing the right thing. But that's a bet, which is a pretty solid bet to take.
Do you think in the current climate, yes, there are signs of growth and things are moving, but sometimes there's a bit of a tendency perhaps for the institution, if I might call it that, maybe dampens down a bit of the innovation and inspiration that, it's there in organisations, but sometimes it's not allowed.
But I think that's a great question, right? I really, a lot of people will tell you banking, something which I've done all my life, is an industry which has had a low level of innovation. And one of the reasons it's had a low level of innovation is because of the extreme amount of regulation. Frankly, to my mind, it's an absolute excuse. It's an absolute excuse, right? Where we put our mind and our hearts and we've kind of worked at it, we've had significant breakthroughs, right? In fact, when I'm talking now to graduates or people who are joining retail banking, I tell them, you've got to ask the question, what industry are you joining? Are you joining finance? Are you joining information? Or are you joining technology? The good news is the boundaries between industries is becoming very, very blurred, which then means that this is a huge opportunity for you to innovate in finance, technology, or information, right? Now, the limits which you set are only in your mind, only in your mind. Obviously, it's not easy. If it was easy, anybody would do it, right? But how can you push yourself? Come back to this whole notion of, are you going deep down within yourself to recognize your own potential, right? And if you're recognizing your own potential, you will get these breakthroughs. And frankly, everything else is an excuse. I don't have money, I don't have budgets, regulatory, resources. It's all an excuse.
Well, you can talk yourself in and out of anything, can't
Exactly
you, in
right.
terms of...
It's like saying, I can't exercise, I don't have the time, right?
Yeah. And I think to enable people to do that, you certainly have to have a culture in your organisation that at the very least allows it, or allows people to maybe think a bit differently, or maybe think about something that might not be successful. And I wonder if the last few years, the difficult economic climate, people are a bit fearful of that. It's almost easier to keep it as is rather than stretching it. How do you think you build a culture that enables people to innovate more, or to be inspired more, or to just think, excuse me, what if?
It's hard to define culture, right? It's very hard to define culture. But maybe the best definition I've seen is culture is what you do or how you behave when nobody's watching, right? That may be the best definition I've come across, right? Yeah. And I think it's just setting the tone from the top that it is okay. This is what we're trying to get done, right? Setting a broad goal so that everybody knows where we are going, and then spending a lot of time making sure we get people aligned to that goal. And therefore, alignment of the organization and say, this is what we're trying to get done, this is the broad framework. Within this framework, allow creativity, encourage conversation. No one person can be on a pedestal. If you allow yourself to be set up on a pedestal, you will fail. You will fail. You will get pushed off. And that, I think, is what you try and create, harness the cumulative potential of everybody in the team.
And that is something that has to be continuous, though, isn't it? Yeah, it's all very well saying, well, this is where we're headed. Okay, but it has to be done daily, doesn't it? Almost hourly, this is where we're headed, this is what we're doing. Yes, things might come in and from an unexpected direction.
Yeah, again, we've been talking about this, right? You can keep communicating, and when you're completely exhausted of having said it, you're just about to start break evening, just about to getting the message across. Double up.
Yeah, that's when you have to do it again. Yeah, exactly. We've talked a bit around this already, but what drives you? What are the things that, with all of those things that we've talked about that, really sets, I suppose, that vision for you, if you like, that bit that really drives?
So it's really, for me, it's about what is my potential? What at the end of all of this, what have I left behind? What have I learned about myself? Where have I pushed myself? How could I have done something better, right? Have I really, at this age even found my full potential, or is there more I can do? Am I learning every single day, right? Because that is the only thing that's going to keep me active, going to keep me young, that's going to keep me going, right? And so
absolutely.
You just say, okay, what did I do today? How did I get a little better, just a little better today than I was yesterday? And every day that I just got a little better than I was yesterday is a good thing, right? Keeps you going.
Yeah, no, it's excellent. And is that what takes you through the tough days as well? When it's hard, or something's come in from, I don't know, industry or regulators, or just more in the press, or whatever it might be?
There are down days, there are up days, right? But I think staying positive and staying focused, right? Everything happens for a reason. You can't control a whole bunch of things that you can't control. But if you're true to your cause, if you're truly committed, there should be no reason. I mean, a lot of people talk about regulators. I keep telling my team, the regulator is looking after the interests of the customer. I am also looking after the interests of the customer, where there is no degree of separation. So everything they're doing, in fact, should be helping me. It's a mindset, and just keep going down that mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting you mentioned that, because I think culture taps back into mindset And I think if it's not in the mindset, be that the mindset or of the individual or indeed of the organisation, if that's not there, it's harder, isn't it?
Very hard, much harder. Nothing dramatic is ever achieved without a lot of effort. There's no question.
No, absolutely. Just taking a slight tangent for a moment, I know that you're a founder director of Lend a Hand in India. Can you tell us a bit more about that project?
So Lend a Hand is an awesome project. In fact, this is somebody who used to work with me in New York and now doing it full time. But basically this is about providing education in rural India. And that's a big deal. Kate, you know, I've come from very, very humble background, and I went through a fair amount of difficulty. But what has helped me break out of all of this is education. You know, the good old adage, get a hungry man, you give him a fish, you feed him for a day, teach him how to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's just so applicable, right? And education is something that helps a person break through, lever, to get into a completely different mindset.
Well, you can't take it away. You can never take that away.
And then one person educated makes the whole family, changes the whole family.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's really brilliant. And obviously, going back to things your mother utterly believed in terms of, yes. It's fantastic. If, talking about, the things that you've done and what you look to achieve and sort of want to achieve, what would you say to someone who maybe is looking to make a change, or finding it hard, or something really difficult happened in life, but thinking, actually, I want to achieve my full potential, however hard that is?
So I think it's really, really important, first of all, for a person to find his or her passion, right? Because excellence can only be achieved if you're passionate about something. I sincerely believe that. And there's no harm in saying, I like this and I'm going to do this. Now, 3 years down the road, it may change a little bit, but that's okay. That's fine. It doesn't have to be that whatever you decide today is going to be with you for a lifetime. So it can change. That's not the point. But just say, put down a plan. Put down and think about what is it that you want to do. Document it, right? I think documenting things, you don't have to share it with anybody, but it just helps you get more clarity about what is it that you are trying to get done, right? And spend some time with yourself every single day to kind of think about, so is this really giving me the pleasure that I want? A lot of people talk to me about work-life balance, and maybe it's not, the politically right thing to say, but what is work-life balance, right?
Life. It's all together.
It's all about stuff that you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? It's something that gets you going, right? I'm excited about what I do. I'm excited every single morning. Now, just because it's a Saturday, I can't stop being excited about what I do. It just doesn't work that way, right? Now, of course, I've got other responsibilities and other things that I have to do, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that I'm excited about what I do.
So actually the advice is finding out what you're excited about. What do you want to be known for?
I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror, not anybody else, but I want to look at myself in the mirror and say that every time I took on something, what I left it was in a much better position than what I inherited, right? And this is not about being evaluated by anybody else, because anybody else, you eventually put on a show, you eventually put on an act, you present yourself, you sell yourself, you have a brand. But can you look in the mirror and look at yourself and honestly say, I was a trustee to the job that was given to me, that I chose to do, and I did it as a trustee. And I use the word trustee because I think there's a fiduciary responsibility. And whatever that task may be, if that task could be, was I a good father? Was I a good shepherd of the business? Was I a good shepherd of life? Was I a good husband? Whatever. Right? So the task is not important. The important thing is, did I do it, my job as a trustee?
Excellent. That's been very inspiring, very aspirational for many people, I'm sure. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you for being here this afternoon.
No, it's great. Thank you so much. Brilliant. Thank you.